Welcome to Collective Soulversations. I'm Jody Jones, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this amazing journey exploring spirituality, healing, and personal growth. With over 15 years of experience as a psychic medium and energy healer, I've made it my mission to help people connect with their true selves, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. In every episode, I chat with incredible guests who bring their own unique stories and insights to the table. We dive into different tools and practices that can help support you on your path of self discovery. So, whether you're just starting out or you've been in this journey for a while, Collective Soulversations is all about creating a friendly and welcoming space for us to explore the mysteries of the soul together. So, grab your favorite cup of tea, get comfy, and let's dive into this enlightening adventure together. Hey, everybody, welcome to Collective Soulversations. I'm Jody Jones, your host, and I have a really cool guy with us today. We're going to have some really interesting conversations. So, I am going to introduce you to him and then we will bring him in. I have Mr. Peter Woodbury with us, and I'm going to go through and tell you all this stuff. It's quite impressive. Peter received his undergraduate degree in psychology from Harvard University and his master's in social work from Boston University School of Social Work. Then he taught counseling for Boston University School of Social Work for several years. He became interested in hypnosis and trained in hypnotherapy and past life regression with Dr. Brian Weiss, Dr. Alan Chips, and Dr. Daniel Brown. After a successful career in Boston area as a psychotherapist and graduate school professor, he decided to move to Virginia Beach in 2002. He had learned about Edgar Cayce while he was in college and decided to become part of the Edgar Cayce organization. He first became the organization's conferences facilitator. He then began to speak on behalf of the organization and became one of the Cayce organization's most popular speakers, creating their life coaching and regression hypnosis certification trainings, which sold out each year. He also taught regression hypnosis at their Atlantic University. Peter has become one of the world's most prolific regressionists, having conducted over 7,000 regression sessions and about 350 regressions a year. He is also a life coach and a mentor to coaches and regressionists. He travels extensively as a speaker and tour leader, leading spiritually based travel programs around the world. Welcome, Peter. Welcome. How are you, my friend? How are you?
Good, good. Hi, Jody.
So nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I love, this is one of the perks of having the podcast is that I get to bring really interesting, cool people on and have fun conversations with them. And we don't always get to do this. I've known you for years and years and years. I've followed your stuff. I've watched your things, and we had an actual chance to talk because I did a session with you years ago. And but now I get to we get to jump in and dive in. So welcome. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I know what you mean. For the Casey organization, I did their interview podcasts, and it was really fun. It takes a while to, because at first they give you canned questions. You don't even listen to the answer. You're just asking the next question. I hated that, and so I got much more into just like having a conversation.
That's cool. Yeah. So
Yeah,
then you know what I'm talking about because it just becomes this exploration with these people that I really find interesting. So it's a
yeah.
treat for me for sure. So that's awesome. So I want everybody to kind of know. I mean, obviously, I read the bio. We can tell you're a smart guy. I know that you've quoted in saying that that it was your uncle Richard that would say that people will think you're really smart now because you're from Harvard, right?
Right.
I love that. I think I'd
Yeah.
like to meet your uncle Richard. He sounds cool.
Yeah, he's the same uncle who introduced me to Edgar Casey.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Sounds like a really cool person. So, give us a little bit about your backstory. And I say this because, one of my favorite things is to people watch. And I'm sure, because you kind of do this professionally, really. It's, psychology, all of the
Hmm.
things you're doing, we people watch.
Hmm.
And I love listening to people tell their backstory because it kind of brings everything into perspective of like, okay, who is this person that's sitting before me and how did he get here? Why is he the way that he is? So take us back in time a little bit to something specific where you either struggled or it was a dark time in your spiritual journey or people talk about their awakening.
Hmm.
So let us know, was there like a time on your journey that kind of was like, what is this and how am I going to do this?
Yeah, what comes to mind is what brought me on the spiritual path and what brought me to Casey. I have to say that my drug of choice as a kid was sports. Like as long as I could play outside or play basketball, it was like, I would lose myself and I wouldn't have to deal with, the problems of a family, growing up. And so it just helped me cope. And so then I must have been around 30 and I developed this chronic fatigue and I couldn't, not only could I not do sports, it was exhausting to go to the kitchen and try to, have a glass of water. And I remember I was, not having, I called it drug of choice because I realized sports was really making me not face certain things. And so I was just left with myself and not being able to run away from my problems. And what came to me, as I was just mourning the loss of my physical fitness and energy, just came to me, you, Peter, get back on the spiritual path. It was just real clear, get back on the spiritual path. And of course, I had heard about Edgar Cayce, and I just started to look into it more thoroughly. And I started, first starting physically, looking at his readings about diet. And I realized my diet was garbage. So I started changing my diet, and then I started looking at what was going on in my mentality, my mind, and was I in? I think that's when I joined a Search for God group, and it set a different direction in my life. I was always interested in spiritual things, but it had been sort of backburnered, and that kind of depressing period of my life made me turn like a lot of people when they get sick, they turn to God. And that would have been mine. I mean, I wasn't near death or anything like that, but it was my body has never really been the same since then. It turned out to be like some complicated thing that knocked out my thyroid, and I'm perpetually, every year I have to check my thyroid and check the hormones and all that sort of thing. So it's like I have a different body now, but I have a much deeper spiritual life than I did at that juncture. And I think if I hadn't had that, if my body hadn't started falling apart, I probably would have become a gym teacher. I probably would have
Right.
done some. I was not going to go to the MBA. There was no hope, but I would have ended up. I built my life around sports. Like my jobs were so that I could play in these leagues and everything. And and I
Right.
had physical problems. I had sprained ankles and sciatic nerve issues, but I just kept pushing through.
It's funny how that, the universe does that, right? It'll so many people will say that their awakening came through some type of pain, some type of suffering, right?
Yeah.
I feel like for some of us, it's like we're the ones that are very, very, um, A type personality. We're very like, we're going to do this. This is how it's going to be. Here's my plan. I got it. And then the universe comes in and like takes us out. And then it's like, okay, so what's plan B then? If plan A was not happening, what's plan B? So let us know, because some of our listeners are not going to know who Edgar Cayce is. I want to hear your kind of like who you think Edgar Cayce was.
He was born in 1877 in rural Kentucky, and he was born with tremendous amount of psychic abilities. And then he lost his voice when he was like 19, and started trying because it was chronic. It was a chronic laryngitis that lasted for I think like almost a year. And he was trying everything. And one of the things he tried was hypnosis. And when he was under trance, he could speak in a normal voice, but when he'd wake up, he'd lose his voice. So they kept working with hypnosis and he eventually got to such a deep state that he started talking about himself as a third person. And he started saying, tell him to return the blood flow. This is Edgar Cayce talking about himself.
Right.
So he's saying, tell him, he's basically Edgar Cayce, tell him to return the blood flow to normal and balanced conditions in the vocal cords. And people there saw his throat turn red as the blood returned to the vocal cords, and he was able to speak again. And then from there, they wanted to try it with other people, like, because he was so deep in trance that let's ask him about, Aunt Alice, who's sick. And it turned out that he could access, he'd say, oh, Aunt Alice has this problem, and she, give her this and give her that. And so those became what are called readings. And then he got famous for those, and he's ended up probably giving something like 14 or 15,000 readings. 14,000 are kept at the Edgar Cayce or the ARE that's in Virginia Beach. And so he gave readings on 10,000 different subjects. And since there were some metaphysical connections in my family of origin, I was always interested. And Edgar Cayce just blew my mind. Like, it was just the thinking that he put forth, and the way that it made sense, and the way that he explained things. So I, being into spirituality, and being into psychology, and being into metaphysics, he was just heaven. He's just like, I think he's the Einstein of psychics.
Yeah, for sure.
Of our kind of generation. I'm sure, like, every 500 years you get another Mozart or something like that. But he was certainly of our generation. It's hard for me to think of anybody who can hold a candle to his abilities.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So, are you familiar with Anthony William, the medical medium?
Yes.
So, in one of Anthony's books, like, so he doesn't call himself a channel, and I don't know why the wording of he doesn't. I think it's probably something to do with his Hay House contract, because they don't want channelers writing their books. But he does, in one of his books, he talks about his abilities as a medical medium. In comparison, because he's saying there's only like 3 on this entire planet that there's ever been: him, Edgar Cayce, and then John of God. So he references those 3 people, which is kind of interesting. But Cayce is, like you say, he just blows everybody out of the water because of the information that he was able to bring through, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, what I've read of the medical medium, it's more general, whereas Casey was very specific. Like,
Right.
he didn't give readings for illnesses. He gave readings for people, and he
Right.
said the how somebody got cancer. They might have the same cancer, but how they got it was really important, and how they needed to treat it. So he would, if he was giving you a reading, it would be very specific to your habits, to your mind, to the things that, even how it started. He would relate things to a fall that
Yeah.
maybe you had had in childhood, or an impacted tooth.
Yeah, and it's, and I find with that, and that's why I think, a long time ago I discovered Edgar Cayce too, and I was going through some physical stuff, and I was like, I need somebody like Edgar Cayce to tell me what's going on, because
I know.
none of the doctors could figure out what was going on with me. And the fact that he brings in, he bridges the gap between the physical world and the emotional world, the spiritual, he like pulls that all in with such great detail, which I feel like is something that we all need to know so much. Now, you yourself saying that you have this physical stuff come up, but obviously you had to address your emotional, spiritual aspects in order to bring any kind of balance, right? Yeah. And so I know that you do the past life regression. And so what brought that, and I know that's all in there, but what kind of like made you excited about that? Like, what was your, and I want to know for you what your thoughts are about the past lives, of having a past life, and why, like, what the purpose of us knowing about it, if it's helpful, if it's not helpful, if you think that it's healing.
Yeah. Let me think of where to start with that. Astrologically, I have Pluto on my ascendant, which makes a lot of sense to me, because Casey says we pick our parents. Well, I picked a psychoanalyst, my dad, and another psychiatrist, my mom. And, we grew up talking about defense mechanisms and talking about our dreams and subconscious motivations. So I was, my parents was like this rich bed for depth psychology. And, I remember I had to do a presentation like in seventh or eighth grade, and I did it on Anna Freud's mechanisms of defense. And for the rest of high school, all my classmates would be like, "You're projecting. That's a project." They came to learn what that was. So it was just my nature. Like I love, when I got into, first I went into acting because I liked portraying psychological dynamics. And then I got into counseling because it's also like working with the complexity of the human condition, which I love. I just, I thrive off of, like if I'm at the grocery store, I ask somebody how they're doing. I want to really know how they're doing.
Right.
Tell me the depths of it. So it gets me in trouble sometimes, but it's my nature. And then hypnosis is like gold. If you like, going into the underworld, or if you like, psychological unconscious depth, hypnosis is for you. So of course, once I got into learning hypnosis, of course, I started with my own regressions. I had a regression at the Brian Weiss training that was just like amazing. Like it just
Brian Weiss, if anybody knows, he's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
He didn't give me the regression. We were just practicing, but with another student. But it was just so many layers. I got to meet my guides, and I got to meet. I called something the oversoul. I'd never used that word before. I had to Google it. It was like it's a Thoreau concept of a kind of like an archetype of a group of soul patterns. So it just blew my mind, like just how much could come. It was a little bit. It was inspired by Edgar Cayce. He said, or someone, I think it's Segru's book, who said the story of Edgar Cayce is really the story of hypnosis. And so, what we're capable of in going into deeper and deeper states of consciousness, like sort of like meditation. You just go, and then you go pretty far. Like Edgar Cayce could go, pretty far out there or deep within to answer questions or to be helpful to people. And then I started feeling like, that we were talking about the new age. So if there's a new age, what was the old age?
Right.
And what I think the old age is that the avatar, the teacher, the guru was outside of you. Like if you were sick or dying or dead, you had to go to Jesus, and he did the heavy lifting for you. Or like if you were sick or dying, you went to Edgar Cayce, and he gave you the reading. And I think the new age is that we can do what Jesus did, do what Buddha did, do what Cayce did. We can find those answers within. And so that's really my operating principle when I work with someone, is that they're trying to tap into their own intuition, their own psychic ability. And some people are amazing. Like some people shock themselves in one session what they're able to do. And I tell them, I'll say, wow, you're like, I want a reading from you. Like you're, and then some people like struggle with it because, it's a skill that requires practice. So it's not like one size fits all for everybody. But I just love doing that. I think of it as introducing people to themselves or introducing people to their soul. Sometimes I call my work soul contact. And it's grown way beyond past lives. Like when I first did it, maybe the first 10 years, it was all past life recall. And it's very helpful because you get shown lifetimes that show you patterns that you're falling into that are negative, or latent possibilities of things that you could alter or change. So they require a kind of interpretation because they're almost like a dream.
Right.
So afterwards, there's time that it would take for me and the client to process what they got. It's moved now more into kind of like direct revelation. Like people are getting more communication with guides and maybe seeing parts of a past life, or they'll see a theme with a particular person that they're interested, that they've come with an interest in. So the sessions now are much more direct communication. So less figurative sort of communications. The best I could describe it. And I think that every regressionist develops like a specialty, and I would have to say mine is helping people contact their guides.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And everything that you're saying, I've been getting validation from spirit for several years now, especially about the, healer heal thyself, right? That, and again, for me, I don't know if this is how they do it with you, but they always give me like firsthand experience with everything, which I say often, I don't want to learn through lessons anymore. Can you just like take me to the end of it? But it's a big deal to be able to empower yourself to the point where you are like, okay, I already know all of the stuff that I need to do to heal through my past lives, right? Because, in all of the reincarnations that we've had, we've been the doctors, the healers, all of it. So we do have that cellular memory somewhere in there. So coming to somebody like you is really important because again, it's like you open up that gateway for them, which allows them to, and I feel like the biggest obstacle in this and even in the spiritual journey is the putting away the ego and just stepping aside, right? And
Yeah,
allowing that to
yeah,
direct.
that's the crux.
Yeah.
Because I always say thinking is the atmosphere of the ego,
Right.
and so it's about getting outside of that. And I think it's imagination, like you're trying to move from this thinking rational. Sometimes we associate with like the left brain and going
Right.
into a right brain, creative, open ended. And for almost everybody, at first it feels like they're making stuff up.
Right.
And I've come to think of like it's all made up.
Right.
I think we exist in God's imagination. We're all just this creative, imaginative experience. So, I when people ask are things real or not, I just say what do we know about reality? Like
Right.
reality is a channel on a television. Like we think this is reality. We go to sleep. Well, no, now we're on channel sleep. That's reality. And when we die, that's another reality. And before we're born, another reality. They're all dimensions that like in a TV, they're wavelengths that we can tune into at different states of consciousness. So wherever consciousness is, I consider that reality.
Yeah, for sure. Spirit is always saying to me, anything is possible. So that when there's lots of times, especially and on here, I've had guests on where their scope of what they know about and have studied about and learned about is way beyond my scope of, but can still feel it with truth in it because again, anything is possible. So we put that in there. So I want to know your perception on the past lives and this dimension. So are they happening in the past or are they happening all at the same time? What's your
That's a great question because Edgar Casey had a dream about the future, and when they asked him about it, they said, how are you dreaming about the future? And he said, all time is one. And so the way I can think of it is like let's say I show you my hand like this, and you see the five fingers. So you think, well, this must be the future, and this is the past, and this is now, something like that. But I think in reality, the dimensional way of looking at it is like this. I still have five fingers, but they appear as one. They're all in alignment. And so I think that it's hard for our three-dimensional mind to wrap our heads around all time as one. The way of thinking is that your next life might be 500 years ago. So how does that work? How does time overlap and interplay with each other? But somehow I had one client who Casey said the Akashic records is where our past lives are kind of recorded. Well, this guy went to the Akashic records and he altered his experience in the Akashic records because of the way it was influencing him in his current life. So that was like a present life going to a past life to alter an experience. He didn't alter anything physically. He altered his experience. He died. He came because he had a chronic laryngitis, and it was like Edgar Casey would come and go. There was no medical cause. And then he saw, when he opened a door in trance, he saw a guy with a spear. And he realized this guy had speared him in the throat. and that he had died with this fear and this anger that had like cellularly lodged in his vocal cords that was still affecting him so many years, so many lifetimes later. But when he went back to the Akashic records, he was asked to re-experience the death because they showed him the karma that created that condition, and they showed him what happened afterwards, that it was actually a good thing. Karma needed to be met by his getting speared. And he went back to the death and took it in love. And as soon as he did that, like re-experienced that death in a different consciousness, it was like this ripple effect from that past life all the way to the now, where he knew right away, I'm never going to have this problem again. And he never has.
A real life hack, hey? That's
Yeah, isn't
it,
it? That's how I think of like, wow, so the Akashic records aren't really fixed.
right.
And
And
you
who would
can,
have thought that we could actually go in and do that? I mean, if what they're saying to us there's no such thing as time or space, then obviously we could go in and do that. But yeah, that's
well, people, when they go back to a past life, and the way that I do it is that they're not somnambulistic, as you know. They're still, still Jody watching a past life, and then they're processing it. So it's sort of like that guy. They're seeing, oh, this happened to me, and then they're sort of processing, oh, that's affecting me now in my life, and they sort of do this past life, therapy. Like my example is, I have a sister that I had never trusted. No reason why, but in my consciousness, I figured it made sense. Like I wasn't really aware that I didn't trust her, but I didn't trust her.
right.
And I remember one time I even saw like a Christmas picture of the family, and I asked, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's my sister." It was like some kind of block there.
Yeah.
And then I had this. This was at the Brian Weiss again, the same long regression. I saw myself sort of in an orphanage kind of monastery, like being raised to be a priest. And I realized that the person asked me, "How did you get there?" And I had been left there up for adoption. And when I went to relive the adoption, I saw it was my sister who
Right.
was dropping me off at the orphanage. And I realized, oh, I'm holding on to this grudge. I'm holding on to this resentment. And then I was able to feel her feelings that she had 12 kids. They had to give up one. They thought I was the strongest. And then it was Ireland, that this wasn't personal. And it was like the Akashic record awakening. I went like right away. I let go of this resentment that I had towards my sister. Like it was a misunderstanding. The little boy didn't know why he was left at the orphanage, and I still didn't know why. And I still
Right.
held. That's why past life. I've done tons of talk therapy. Talk therapy is wonderful, but you can only deal with things that are conscious to you.
Right.
And talk therapy, I would have never worked on this subconscious resentment I had for my sister. It had to come up from a past life experience. So they work well together. It's like
Yeah.
now I do life coaching and regression, so I kind of mix both, the kind of what's going on from this life, and then what antecedents there might be from past lives, or what we might be able to access from other dimensions or higher dimensions of consciousness or the guides.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like because I've had past life regressions done before, and there was a time where I was doing it with clients as well. I took the certification and did that. And it always felt like there was like not enough time to do it because it can get quite in detail, right? You take them under, we do the journey,
Yeah.
there's all of this stuff. And then it always feels like there should be a part two of it because it's like, okay, we've unpacked all of this stuff, but like now, like how do I use it to impact myself now in this version of me, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I would see lots, and you would see this too, having done way more than I did, but we have these soul circles, right? So these same souls, like you just said with your sister, having been a mother in one lifetime, now a sister in another, these souls that just interchange these roles,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That always makes everything so much fun.
Hmm.
For sure. I'm gonna share something with you that I have probably told me, less than a handful of people.
Ah.
And I just want to, so it's a big deal because
Hmm.
it always kind of felt weird to me, but I'll share it with you. And I want to just get your perception on it. in the very first regression that I did, and it was with, she's a, brilliant doctor. She's actually going to be on the show sometime in January. And it was so real. Like the whole experience for me was so real. Like it was like I was there. It was like I was in a very lucid dream. Like, I could touch, feel, hear, like all of my senses were in the dream. And it started off where I was sleeping in a barn. Like I was sleeping in a barn with hay. There were cows around me, sheep, barn animals. And then it went into where people were coming to get me, and they were coming to take me out because they had places that I needed to go and help people, but they had to do it in secret. So they were secretly taking me out, and I was a male. I was wearing like sandals, right? So they were taking me out. They were taking me into people's homes, like undercover, like cloak, like I was cloaked. And I remember this whole time having this like sense of just childlikeness, like very like, oh, this is great. Where are we going? Like, no, like, no, like, my God, why am I sleeping in a barn with cows? And
Yeah.
why are my shoes so poor? And so they were taking me, and they would take me into these homes, and they literally would just put me before there were people in beds that were sick in these homes. And this was, way back in time. And I would literally just stand over them with my hands over the people. Again, not like, oh, here's what I do. Here's what I do. Like, literally, I stand here and I put my hands there. And then the people would, thank me. There would be like all these tears and all this appreciation. And we would do this. And then at the end of the regression, I can remember this like it happened yesterday. This is like how vivid it goes. At the end of the regression, I was on the cross. I was on the cross. I was nailed to the cross. I was in agony. My whole body was just in pain. But my mind and my heart felt broken because all I kept on feeling was like, why, Father? Why? What have I done to deserve this? Why is this happening to me? And then that was it. And then it was over. And I remember saying to Dr. Oswald that she's the one who did this at the end privately, because I was like, hey, everybody's just gonna think I'm a whack
Yeah.
job, because like that's like too much. And I mean, I know for certain that it was not my imagination, because I know my imagination well. This was, like
Yeah.
I said, it felt like a living dream, like a very lucid dream. And I said to her, like, was I Jesus? Like, was this like? And I can't remember the full thing she said to me, but it was like basically, it's possible. Like that was possible, and I was like, oh my God, like. So you see why I probably don't share that with a lot of
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That,
Definitely.
oh, now you think you're Jesus.
Yeah.
But have you ever had experiences with clients where like something significant like that came up, and it's like,
Yes.
how do you explain that?
At first, at first I thought I regressed Mary Magdalene because it was this vivid Mary Magdalene, and then another woman came in and she was a vivid experience of Mary Magdalene. By the third time it happened, I was saying, "What is going on?" Like it wasn't. They weren't making it up. They were crying. They had a relationship with Jesus, a lot of overlap, and what I came to think and believe is that I think that in important junctures in history, when we're moving from one age to the other, the Akashic records open up and we move into kind of a greater oneness. And I think that just like we could go to a library now and read Julius Caesar's autobiography and learn about his life, or we could read someone else's autobiography, I think that we can now access the Akashic records of other experiences, and we can download them and we can gain the benefit of it. Like I think this time is so important that like time is accelerating. So there's no time for you to live Jesus, to reincarnate whatever many times to be in that consciousness. You can tap into it and gain that for you was a snippet, like that moment of why have you forsaken me? Like to me, that's one of the most powerful, most beautiful teachings and moments of Christ. And so for you to personally feel that, like I think that whatever you may have been dealing with in your life, it was like, my experiences sometimes with Jesus are like, for a long time I wanted to see Jesus, and finally he told me, he says, how about you stop trying to see me outside yourself and you try to see me with your eyes. Let's see together. Like let me overlap with you. So I think that was something like it. You overlapped with that experience so deeply and so intensely that it's yours. And I think that if you really look at the oneness of souls and everything, we're all one. You're another me, I'm another you, and we just have this illusion of going to a party and having different experiences. But ultimately, I think that on levels like trance state, we tap into that oneness, and I think you are Jesus, you are the Christ. I am too. Everyone is. They're more or less aware of that. Did you connect it to anything? Like, was something going on in your life that it was really helpful to understand what Jesus felt having led such a perfect life, beautiful life, to be dying on a cross and to feel like I don't know, F you, God, like what the F, like,
Right.
like what else, here I am, I've been on this cross for 4 hours. I'm just bleeding. Like, why don't you get me out of here? And then he crosses right after that, which
Right.
is interesting. There's
Yeah.
almost like he needed to, that it's almost like in our spiritual path that needed to be expressed.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like at the time, it just, like for me, it definitely was this like connection to seeing life through the eyes of a child, right? And having like that innocence
Yeah, you
about
were a healer.
yeah, about the perception of it. And I feel like too, it was also like this, I feel like me answering my calling of becoming a healer and doing the work that I do, there has to be like a certain humbleness that comes in there, right? Like as soon as ego comes into that equation and you think you're doing all the work, it's like you're not doing any work anymore. And I feel like maybe at that point in my career, I needed that like humbleness to come back in to remember how small I am, right? I feel like that was and like I said, when I tune into, I mean, I'm able to connect with Jesus energetically whenever I want to. And it's that very pure, childlike, open energy. Like it is to me the closest vibrational energy to my soul energy, to my higher self when I tune into that, the way that feels. And I feel like that's, we all kind of need that reminder, right? That coming back into another thing. And I can ask you about this is I feel like a lot of the things that we've been shown and told, as in Jesus's life, are not necessarily what happened, not necessarily, I think there's a lot of stuff that gets added to it for the agenda, right? Like we want you to be in fear over this. We want you to, if you've ever sat there and talked to any, Roman Catholics there about Jesus, there's a lot of
Oh
fear.
yeah, yeah. When I talk about Jesus, I just say Jesus is personal. Like
Yeah.
everybody has a personal relationship, and for some people, there's beautiful literature about Jesus being gay, and there's beautiful literature about him having had romantic relationship with Mary and having had children. So it's like, and there's other people that feel differently. I just think that they're all true. I think that what matters is that you have that connection and that it speak to you. I mean, if I'm black, white, gay, straight, I want to connect with a Jesus that relates to me.
Right.
So, so I think that matters most. And then, like the guy who went back to his Akashic records, he just changed his thinking. It didn't matter if he was black, white, gay, and for Jesus, does it matter? If he was, whatever, are his teachings changed by
Right.
anything different about the story that we have of him? The only thing I think is the death on the cross and the crucifixion. To me, that's essential to that to the you know, to the what I think he was trying to teach, that there is no death and that there is life after death. I think when that gets deconstructed, I think it's a little complicated, because I think it makes one story that seems to have been wanted to be told almost seem like it was a fake or like a fraud, like he wanted to trick people to thinking that he died and resurrected. So but that's my personal take on it. And the thing is that with the different takes that people have on Jesus, they all add something. They're all valuable. Like I think they all serve to connect us to Jesus and to connect us to God in the most important way. Like when I communicate with Jesus about these things, it's almost like he doesn't care. He's just like, yeah, that's okay. I don't, whatever. It's like there's so much growth and evolution that people are going through, and their capacity to understand, more than three-dimensional concepts and experiences in that. So that's what I feel. But as I'm talking, I feel like I don't want to, that experience that you had, I just want to I don't want to step on it. It was, you had that experience and it means something to you, and that's really all that matters. I was just speaking to if it had happened to me or my experience, but it doesn't, please, I hope you didn't hear it that way, because I know sometimes one of the reasons we keep things so close to our chest is because we tell somebody and they're like, oh, what a bunch of crap, So it's like, so we get so wounded. But I hope if I had to redo it, I would have stuck more with your experience than try to jump in with my interpretation. Because what an interpretation is, just an interpretation. Only you know what that experience was.
No, I thank you, because you actually have like switched it into a different view. I love the idea of how, these momental moments in, the history of human beings become something that we have maybe all been there. Again, we bring in the whole concept, no time, no space, right? There's no past, present, future. I feel like us all having been in those moments, we kind of like, again, it's that oneness, right? We needed it. We needed to have that experience, and for whatever reason, I guess these moments like stick out more in
Oh
our
yeah,
thoughts than
yeah.
others, right?
Well, it's like you can look at what's the most Google searched person this
Right.
month, or what's the most Google searched question, or the book that's most checked out library. I would say in the Akashic library, the last 20 years, I would say Mary Magdalene is the most Akashic record that is most accessed. And I think that because I see her, I see Mary Magdalene now. Like Mary Magdalene is behind Me Too, and Mary Magdalene is behind feminism, and that energy, because in her life that time she was so oppressed. Like after Jesus was gone, the patriarchy came right back in and
Right.
put her in the back seat. He was woke or whatever. He wasn't thinking that way, but once he was gone, they went back to the old ways, and so that energy is back here, where what she had to say and teach can now come through every woman. Well,
It's
unfortunately, not
relevant to the
every.
timing, right? It's like,
Yes,
yeah.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. And especially with, I hear from so many, teachers and guides about the feminine energy awakening in everybody, through Mother Gaia, through,
Oh
all
yeah,
of it. It's really interesting that people are going to like Mary Magdalene for like the guidance of that. That's pretty cool.
yeah. And in Egypt, it's Isis. In Egypt, the Isis. You go to the Isis temple, and she's there. She's speaking. She's holding court, because this is the time of that. I think, like even Casey said, Jesus was the overseer of the Piscean age, but his mother was the Aquarian. So I think that Mary, the Mary, Mother of God, Mary Magdalene polarity is being incorporated in this age, which
Yeah.
Christianity, had Madonna, prostitute,
Right.
separation, and that's getting healed.
Yeah, and maybe you can answer to this too. I had somebody send me a meme the other day, and it's funny because so I have a teenage daughter who's a Capricorn, and And I don't know if you've ever known any female Capricorns, but they can they can be very challenging. And so she sent me this meme, and it was a picture of Jesus, and it said, if anybody thinks that Jesus was born on December 25th, they're wrong. Like that, because there's no way that a Capricorn was going to give their lives for anybody else. And so I feel like there may be, you know how there's, people believe that the astrology we follow is not the real astrology, the calendar we follow is not the real calendar. And I never ever thought about those things before, but when I saw that December 25th, and I thought, oh yeah, he was supposed to be born in that, would make him a Capricorn. There's no way he's a Capricorn. There's no way energetically that that guy was a Capricorn.
Yeah, yeah. Casey said he was a Pisces.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, he was more like born in March. But
Okay.
would today be around March 18th, something like that, which is a overlap with Casey. Casey was also a Pisces.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Like I can definitely feel the energy of
Yeah,
that.
he connected so much to the Piscean and talking about fishermen and his symbol was the fish.
Yeah.
So
That makes more sense.
yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's a story. But you just see how that's like Spirit's just saying things are so bendable, right? Like they all of the data that comes in, all of the books that we read, like you said, it's perception. It's everybody's perception. So you have to be this is why when I bring guests on and I'm like, I want to hear your backstory, let's know who you are. It's because when you're sharing mostly from your perception. And if we don't know where you kind of come from, it validates the validity of what you're sharing with us, right? Yeah, for sure. So what is your feeling, and how this has come for you is the near death experiences? Has that What's your kind of like intuition tell you on that? All of the when people come back and they have like similar stories of, I've seen the light and I had this message and I did this life review.
Yeah, I think I think a regression in its highest form is like a miniature near death experience.
Yeah.
Where I think it's you leave your conscious, your three-dimensional physical consciousness for a period of time, and you experience higher levels of consciousness, and then you come back. Just like a near-death experience is like a very, very strong, oftentimes very strong, like a regression experience, where you
Yeah.
know you meet your guy. I've had people meet deceased loved ones. I've had people have almost go into the light, have very, very similar experiences. But what's interesting is a near death experience is always like some moment where they're told, no, you have to come back, or you have a choice to make, like
Right.
and then they wake up back in the ER or wherever they started from. But that
Right.
doesn't happen in a regression. I've never had someone, you're going too far.
All right. Take me back. I don't
Yeah,
want to
you
see
got to come
anymore.
back to life.
Yeah, that never happens, right? I mean, I've never had that experience in a regression where I'm like, no, I don't want to see anymore. It's never like that, which is kind of interesting because then there's like the fear in there again. It's the ego's out of the equation, right? It's not like this take me back. So lots of people talk, and especially in the spiritual community, they talk about the reincarnation trap. And so what do you think about that? Like did Edgar ever talk about that? And then
What would it mean? What's the reincarnation trap?
well, their believing is that we don't have to reincarnate, that we don't have to keep coming back and doing the lessons and the filling out the karmic deeds. We can just not come back. Like
When I hear that, I always think that the people that are not going to come back are usually the ones who want to come back.
yeah,
The ones that say, I'm out of here, I'm done with this place. I'm usually because you still got a lot of work to do here.
yeah,
So, yeah, I do think that Earth can be thought of as a school, and that we do learn, and that we can graduate from it. But I think that like what gets created on Earth has to be met on Earth, and so I think it's the necessities of karma that bring us back. Like I think we pick up like non-spiritual viruses while we're here on life, and then when we leave and go into spirit, we have like these weights. We have things that weigh us, that we can't really continue our spiritual journey until we love where there was hate, or we forgive where there was condemnation, that
Mm.
sort of that sort of thing. So that's how I think that we end up. I think that it's sort of both is true. I think that we can choose when we reincarnate, like the conditions that are to be met. But I think that eventually, if we have karmic work to do, that we do reincarnate.
Yeah, that we come back here to. I can remember there was, and I've heard a couple of people say this, where they were older, they had done the spiritual journey, written books, taught classes, done all the things, and I can remember them specifically saying, "This is my final lifetime here. I've made everything that I needed to do. I won't be coming back." And I can remember when they were saying it thinking, really? That's interesting, because I don't know how, if we had that option, if we were like, yeah, you know what? Because who decides that? Who decides that you have reached the ascended master state and you no longer have to, right? Do you
Yeah.
think that that's something where is that the, stepping into our own power, being our own guide, our own guru again? Is that
I
really?
think that I think some people can tell that maybe they're not going to reincarnate again. But when I hear it in that tone of like, "Oh, I'm sick of this place. I'm
Yeah.
done with it," that just seems to me like, there's some work to be done. But I think sometimes people will have like, they'll be going somewhere and they get this feeling of like, wow, I have a feeling this is going to be the last time I'm going to see this place. And they get this strong emotional feeling about seeing the earth, like this sadness
Right.
about leaving. That I trust more than when somebody says, oh, because it sounds to me like ego. Like
Right.
when they say I'm out of here. See, that one of the things I've learned in my work is that the work that we do here is planned by the soul, and the ego is just born when we come in. And
Yeah.
this ego is gonna die off when we
Yeah.
leave. So the ego is this little finite creation of a lifetime. The soul, the whether we reincarnate or not, is a soul issue, not an ego issue.
Yeah. Because the ego is earthbound, right? That frequency is earthbound.
Yeah, the ego is like a car,
Right.
and in Earth you need a car, but once you're not in Earth, you don't need your car anymore. You just float around. I mean,
Right.
you can just, you're astral, you're
Yeah.
non-physical. So
Yeah.
yeah, we all need this car. And I've been reading a lot of Jung lately, and his idea of what the ego is, and his idea really is everybody needs an ego. It's like the ego isn't inherently bad or anything like that,
Right.
because people
Right.
always demonize the ego. Sometimes I think of it like, your ego can either be a Volkswagen or a Rolls Royce, and if you've
Right.
made it a
Yeah.
Rolls Royce, it's like there's a lot of ego in that vehicle. Or if it's
Right.
just a functional car, then
Yeah.
there's not as much ego. You're using it as a functional thing rather than to show off or that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's how we use our ego, how we build it, what we feed it with, the thoughts that we feed it with, that make the ego either kind of a useful tool rather than a dictator, something that
Yeah.
controls our life.
And I feel like, part of the biggest discovery that we do when we come here is like that self-discovery. And that self-discovery is, I remember saying this a long, long time ago, is that all of the spiritual people come and they talk about their soul and they talk about the aspect of their soul and the soul awakening. But there's often like not enough time spent on getting to know your ego, getting to know your pain body, all of the aspects of, like you say, your human vehicle, because there's a reason why you're incarnating here. And yes, your ego is, your ego vibrationally is very strong energy. Like it's the one that like motivates you, and it's the one that can get
Yeah,
things done, and it takes you places, and so there's greatness in
yeah.
there.
I like who I am. I like that I'm quirky, and that I find my jokes funny. I like that about myself, and not that I have to be. In order to not have an ego, I just am this blank. Like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
yes, I think that what I've noticed though, let's say when I was younger, I've always had a sense of humor, but I can see the evolution of my consciousness through my ego is that there used to be butts of my joke. Used to
Right,
it
right,
would be funny, but somebody would be getting hurt in it.
right,
And
right.
as I've gotten older, I don't want that kind of humor. Like I
Yeah.
want to be funny, but in a way that is positive and instructive and life giving rather than scapegoating somebody and laughing at somebody. So I could see how, yeah, a sense of humor can be mean or it can be nice. It's again, it's like the ego. It's how you what you use it for, how you feed it.
Yeah, and it's that. And if you guys, I'll give you guys all of Peter's links and stuff, but on Facebook, and that's where I started following Peter on there. He shares a lot of funny things on his page. Like, I mean, he shares all the deep spiritual stuff, all of the that stuff as well. But I feel like, whenever it was that I found you, that's kind of that lightness was very much what I needed because on this journey, it can be so scholarly. Having come from Harvard, you can know that, right? It's like, we have to do this, you have to do that, don't do that. This is, and so
Oh
when you're
yeah.
constantly making fun of the things,
Well,
it's so
if you're not
refreshing.
laughing, you're not learning, you're not living.
Right.
I just think humor and lightness are. I had a past life in the Temple of Joy in Egypt, and it's so deeply ingrained in me that if you're not in joy, you're wasting your time. And what a horrible thing to do. Like there's times where I'm just like heavy burdened, and I'm like going, oh my God, I'm like I used to teach to avoid these moments. How to
Right.
stay in joy. Yeah. So that like my page, I love laughing. I love quirky humor, and so many people have written to me, and it's helped me because sometimes I think I spend too much time on social media, but so many people have written to me and told me how helpful my page has been to them because of the quirkiness, the humor, and then also sometimes the depth. But I would say it's 75% wacky.
Right. Which I think we need more of. There's so many times when we're in the grind, we're stuck in that grind, right? And spirit will just say to me, you have to do something fun. Like, just you need to like stop doing all the stuff and just do something fun. And that's why this project of doing the podcast came up, because I wanted to do something that was fun, that was not going to be like, oh yeah, you have to do this and has a deadline and you've got
Yeah.
like all of the things that come with the work that we do. And it's just sitting here in conversation and allowing people to just like, get into their experiences and explore. And I feel like all the feedback we're getting back from all of the episodes, people are saying that it's like, I never really thought about that before, and I didn't allow myself to think about that. So there's something said for making things a bit lighter, for lightening things up for sure.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like they say in car accidents, like people that are intoxicated or asleep do better in a car accident because they're just like loose.
Right.
And I just
Yeah.
think life, you don't want to go through life tight.
Yeah.
It's like
Rigid, and then you
try to,
break.
yeah, try to loosen up and so many sources just say that try to find humor and laugh every day and try to find humor even in things that are bizarre or in the wrong moments, like when in school, it's so remember those moments where you're with your friend and you couldn't stop laughing and you got in trouble for it. Those are
Right. Right.
beautiful moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when you said about the difference between the ego energy and the soul energy, it's often like, vibrationally you can tell the difference when, so we say, okay, so should we do this? Is this opportunity good for us to do? And the ego will come in and be like, well, there's this and there's that, and we need to think about that. And if I tune into my higher self is always like, sure, okay. You want, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you could be literally standing at the top of the cliff and go, should we just jump off of this cliff now and do this? The soul is like, okay.
Oh yeah, it's true. Like I've had this big draw, like, oh, should I write a book? And I got to write a book, and in trance, should I write a book? It's like, Peter, write a book if you want to. If you don't want to write a book, don't write it. It's like, relax, would you? And then
Yeah.
but it did say like, you might reincarnate to write that book, but that's okay. But that made me think like, I don't want to reincarnate to write the book. So,
Yeah, you want to get it done now. I know that I'm in the middle of writing my book now. I've been 5 years in writing the book, so it's
oh, good.
definitely a progress
Yeah.
that will come out. It's interesting, and I feel like everybody, some of the most important work that they should do when they're on their soul's journey, on their sentience journey, is really just getting to know the aspects of themselves, right? Like knowing that ego, knowing the pain body, knowing the soul. And do you agree that like the regression allows you to do that without like having to be in the mind about it and have to figure it
Yeah.
out and make
Well,
sense?
well, what I like about doing regressions is that my ego isn't involved, and their ego isn't involved.
Yeah.
We're just opening up to a creative process, and so I like to make the suggestions of let's receive whatever would be most helpful for you. So it's not like I'm a great regressionist because I know exactly the right questions to ask, or I've learned in the process to follow that the person before me, I always think that their soul is pregnant and wants to birth something into their consciousness, and I'm just the midwife of that process. I'm just there to try to help that birth happen, and I'd have no idea what that birth is going to be. And the client, it's usually in line with something that they're asking or thinking about. Sometimes it's a little bit out of left field, but it means so much to them that it comes from them. Like a lot of times, sometimes in an experience, I get an idea of what spirit is trying to tell the person, but I can tell they haven't gotten it yet. And I'm not going to say, they're trying to tell you this, what I do, I take them to the guides, and then the guides will tell them something very similar. And they take it. They're like, oh,
In their own language. Yeah.
yeah, because it's from them. It's like your own dream means much more to you than somebody telling you, giving you advice. So
Yeah.
so sessions are never advice. They're very much. I guess it's like having a birthing a child and being in awe of your own self, but your own self in relationship to soul or to spiritual forces. So I think there's just a lot of beauty and a lot of power in a
Absolutely.
session.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I'm doing readings for clients, there's, of course it's their guides that are coming through, right? They're teachers because they know their language the best. And I'm kind of just the observer in the process, right? I'm just, the translator. And there's often times where, they will give information and the client, you can just energetically feel it. They're like not receiving it. They're like, no, I don't want to
Right.
hear that. I don't want to, I don't
Right.
want to,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah. And so I feel like if you're doing that kind of work through regression, that kind of like, the
Yeah.
resistance goes away,
It goes
right?
away. It's all from them. I'm not putting words in their mouth. I just repeat what they say. Sometimes I repeat something they say a lot because I want to reinforce it if it's been
Yeah.
really constructive. But just backtracking to humor, the guides are very, very funny.
Yeah.
Like they like one time this woman, she wanted to know why she picked her parents. And she outlined substance abuse, suicide, like really rough childhood.
Yeah.
And then she got to her guides and she said, "Why did I pick my parents?" And they said, "Well, your dad was really good looking, and your mom was really smart. And look at you. You wanted to be good looking and smart." And I remember she just said, she said, "Are you kidding?" And they said,
Right.
"Yeah." Said, "Yeah, we're kidding. You picked them because you wanted to learn." But I love that they use the humor to
Yeah.
to to, to disorganize the person. Like
Right.
they're like, "What?" Like that is exactly because
Okay,
almost
now
like
I'm listening. Now you have my
right. Like if you
attention.
give
Yeah.
them the answer that they're expecting, they have a wall up. But
Yeah.
the humor tore down the wall. She was like, she was like open, like what? Like
Right.
can I hear
Right.
that again? And then they
Yeah.
said we're joking, and then they
Yeah.
gave them the truer answer. And they do that a lot, where there's a lot of paradox, a lot of humor
Yeah.
put
And it's
forth.
because sometimes we're just, it's like you have these guides with you and they're with you as far as I know for in this particular lifetime. Maybe they've been in other lifetimes as well. And I feel like some of the life lessons that we work on are things that we are always working on. So it's like you're that student in the classroom and you have the same teacher that's saying the same thing to you, over and over, and we just like have deaf ears to it. So I feel like that's why they mix things up a bit, They bring in that humor or they bring in, some really fun challenges just so that it shakes us up a bit. So that we're like, "Oh, what were you saying there? I wasn't quite listening, but now I'm listening because now you have my attention," right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one time It was like hearing God laughing at my problems. And I
Yeah.
was like, what's this about? And I saw that what God saw was like a kitten chasing its tail. And it
Right.
looked funny. And it was like really like how many times we're chasing our own tails we're creating our own problems. Like it's just like we're trying to, catch something that's, we're pulling away from ourselves. So I
Yeah.
remember that was a interesting
The
moment.
way that they showed it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, again, I feel it's like, also it's the personality. Like certain personality types will be, it's funny because Spears is showing me like a classroom set up in the classroom. And, there'll be the personality types like you and I. We're at the back of the class and we're probably like cracking jokes and like trying to,
Right.
um, and so the teacher has to change the way because in the middle row is the student that is like dictating, writing everything down word for word and
Right.
memorizing it, right? There's all these different, so when they come through, their communication process needs to be suited for the way that we receive it, right? It's like not everybody, has to read something to learn it. They have to see it to learn it. So I feel like that's how they kind of like change their way they work with us for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very like very organic, like the communication. And then it's such an honor, and I learned so much in the experience, like just witnessing, being with these people through these experiences and these significant learning that they have from in different ways, and so often it's parallel to something that I'm working on or issues that I need to remember. And I've had struggled with psoriasis, and a client came in because she wanted to learn about psoriasis. I was like,
Right,
great, I'm going to get paid for this, learn
right,
about it.
right.
And she said, she got into trance, and she said it was a soul choice to strengthen my will. And I knew exactly what she meant, because psoriasis, if you follow Casey, it's related to diet, and you have to control your diet. And I hate controlling my diet.
Right,
I'm half French, I'm half Puerto Rican, I want to eat everything.
right, right,
I
right.
don't want to just eat salads.
Yeah, yeah. There's a big lesson. I can
Yeah.
remember this similar thing happening too. This was, back in 2010, and that's when I started having chronic dizziness. It was like unexplained chronic dizziness, did all the tests, did all the stuff. And I can remember, and at the time I had my acupuncture practice, so I had a clinic and, we had a wellness center, and I would have all of these patients that were booking appointments with me, and
For
they were all
dizziness.
suffering from dizziness. And I can
You know what's
remember,
funny? It's like that's been something I've struggled with. It's less recently, but there was a period of like a couple months ago. It was really serious. How did you treat it?
and well, see that again, it's
Just
like
kind of went away.
no, because
Oh.
it's that'd be nice, right?
Mhm.
I'm never one of those people that is like, yeah, you know what? I did this for 6 months and boom, it was gone.
Oh.
That's never my story. My story is always, I did 50 million things and
One of them worked, and you have no idea which one.
yeah. So it's it'll be in the book. All this stuff will be in the book, but I believe that that's where things become multi-layered, right? Like it's like the physical aspect of your human vehicle. I have to address that. And then the emotional aspect, I have to address that. The trauma, the drama, all of that. It's interesting because on this massive journey for healing my own stuff, I have heard many perspectives and read a billion books. And what I'm finding is not one of them has all of the answers, right? Do you find that? It's like you can take a little bit of what that person is saying, and yes, that works great and it really helps. But then you need to go to the next part
Yeah.
and grab
Oh
that
yeah. It's
and
very
that.
personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and this probably like has lots to do with our past lives, I would think, that it's an accumulation of all of the karma, all of the, you know I believe some of us come here to really work on stuff, right? Like we're like, I call us the scholars, we're like the advanced class, which from the human perspective is would be, we're not, we're the sufferers, we're the ones that are in lack and poverty and, pain and suffering. But I feel like it's not just an easy quick fix for us. It needs to be like those multifaceted, here's a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that. And it's like energetically, when all those pieces come in, there's that alignment that comes, right? Yeah, for sure. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's just for some of us, it will always just be a work in progress. Like,
Yeah.
do you feel like you through all, I mean, Peter, you've gone on trips and been to healing places and done all the, do you feel like you've got it all figured out, or do you feel like there's like so much more to come?
It's like Carl Jung said that like the more you figure out, it's like you don't reach a pinnacle; it just gets broader. Like it goes like this. So
Right.
so it's like the more. So no, I don't feel like I have it all figured out. I just feel like I have almost more questions and more curiosities, and but it's nice because I do feel like I've evolved. Like I feel that I've moved through things, and then
Yeah.
sometimes like if people ask questions and they're on that pathway, I can be helpful. But when I look forward, no, it's just so much more to learn and to grow and to do, and like the concept of enlightenment. I'm like, when does one ever feel enlightened? Like it's like the end of a road. Like, oh, now I'm enlightened. That's like
Right.
I don't think that there's anything in consciousness that has an end.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing too, and especially in the spiritual community, it's like, we're moving to this 5D. We're moving to this destination where, I don't think that destination exists anywhere. I think that we go there within. And I feel like a lot of people are going to be disappointed when they feel like okay, I've taken the 100th class and I've done the millionth meditation. I'm ready to be in that 5D world. I feel like they're going to be a little bit
Yeah,
disappointed when
yeah,
they
that
show
that
up.
that that stuff is kind of funny. It's a
Yeah.
little. It's just not the way I think.
No, definitely not, for sure. And I feel like, again, it's perfect because all of the stuff that we go through, so every trial that you've had, every tribulation that you've had, it puts you like maybe one step or two steps ahead of somebody else. Right? We don't have to be, I don't need to be on a pedestal. I don't need to be 50 miles ahead of you. I feel like we've reached the place, the ascension of all the souls that are here right now in this particular time. I feel like we're all just kind of like a step behind each other for a reason. Like I feel like it's that step so that we can still be holding each other's hands to like help each other to get to the next step, which is I feel is like an interesting place to be because again, it ties back into what you started the conversation about, was about becoming your own healer, your own guide, right? Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to give like your most important advice right now of like what's helped you the most on your spiritual journey, on your spiritual path, what would you say? What has it been? I know it's not eating all the salads and doing all the
I would think that there's people that and it's hard to separate, but there's like a consciousness on the earth that isn't curious, that isn't seeking within, and is just playing things out unconsciously.
Mhm.
And then there's also people that are striving to learn and to grow and to see patterns and to bring light into dark places of consciousness, to expand their consciousness. And I would, it's just so much people's nature. I was just gifted with that nature of being subconsciously curious. But I think for the good of humanity, people need to. The more people that start to expand their consciousness and understand patterns, and particularly understand what's going on in the times that we've chosen all to be incarnate on, I think that that word woke, is such a slur now, but the awakening of consciousness to see patterns and to see what's going on and to detach a bit, and instead of getting caught up in the drama, to be able to to be with folks that have a sense of what's going on, and so that we don't add to the chaos and can maybe add to what would be the right word, to just constructive consciousness. The planet needs that a lot right now.
Mhm. And so what do you think is one of the most powerful tools of doing that? How do you do that?
I guess it depends on the person. Like, I think that, I look at my path, and since I came from a family of psychotherapists, I said, I'll start with psychotherapy. And it was really helpful. And then I did different sorts of things. I started addressing my fears and trying to become the person I wanted to become. Finding, being curious about myself, like you said, and then I think that the next stage came with, meditation was a huge factor in there, but meditation by itself isn't enough. I used to think that you can just meditate yourself to wellness, but meditation is just a tool. Like, you need other. I would think that maybe the most important thing I would say right now is to find positive community. Like, find a couple of people that are that seem like they got a sense of themselves, of their soul, of purpose and meaning, and learn from each other. Anything. Do a book group, or if you're into the Bible, whatever it is. And I think group work really helped me too. So I know that's a mishigosh of an answer. Casey would say, at some point in your spiritual development, you need to look at your astrology and your past lives. So I think that, but not everybody is ready for that or open to that. So I think it's almost like figuring out what are you ready for, like being honest with yourself. Are you discontented by something, and are you doing things that are really helping you feel better, or are they helping you feel worse or stay about the same? And then what might you try? What I found in my life is synchronicity is so helpful, that all you have to do is start to say, something's broken, something needs help, and just watch what falls in your lap. Like watch where you miss your bus or something, or you get a call or somebody sit next to you. The universe is always wanting to lead you to something constructive. I thank God for books like Damien, like Herman Hesse, when I was growing up, that they just synchronistically introduced me to the concepts and helped me feel I wasn't alone to get through, that adolescence where everyone is trying to fit in. And then when you're really bad at fitting in, you're the one who's like the outsider or the weirdo or something like that. And then you learn like, wow, you were really strong. You couldn't make yourself fit in with
Right.
the norm. Like, I don't know, like dreams are so important. Like, start looking at your dreams, or like, I would guess probably learning how to meditate. Maybe that would be the one thing I would say. Just learn how to listen to yourself from within, and then let that guide you places. See where that takes you.
Yeah, it's definitely a good entry point, right?
Yeah, that was a big turning point experience for me. But then I realized its limitations too. I realized sometimes meditation can be used as an avoidance technique. Like, I'm just going to meditate. I'm going to avoid all my problems, and I'm going to avoid people. I'm going to avoid my karma. I'm just going to sit on a mountaintop somewhere.
Right.
Not that that's all bad, but I think the times are. I think most people are here to be active.
Yeah, absolutely. I find for me that just the practice of mindfulness is more powerful than meditation, because again, it's like that meditation means, you've got to clear everything off, and you've got to sit in silence, and you've got to, but with mindfulness, I can just be doing my dishes, or I can be, like cleaning the house, or doing, and all, to me, when we practice meditation, it's just to create space, because there's such limited space on this planet. Our human vehicles are, they're very dense. The hard drive is full. So we need to create space. And that's one of the easiest ways to create space, is just, to allow yourself to be present in the moment, uh, and open up yourself into that big space that we all are in without our human bodies, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think meditation sometimes, like, just like we need to work out our physical bodies to stay fit, I look at meditation as a little bit of a workout for the mental body. to help us stay mentally fit. Because for me, it's really helped with learning I'm not my thoughts. A lot of people think they are their thoughts, but when you, after a period of time with meditating, you realize there's a thought going by, and like I can pick it or I don't have to pick it. Like it's like
Right.
I'm at the grocery store. I don't have to pick the Doritos today. I can
Right.
wait around. So that's how it's been helpful for me. Meditation now for me is more like almost like receiving. Like I just go in this place and I get a lot, and so I'm trying to kind of not necessarily clear, like observe it and just keep going. The Jerry Seinfeld is a huge meditator. Did you know that he does
Yeah.
TM twice, at least twice a day, sometimes more, and he touts it for energy. He doesn't. I don't think of Jerry Seinfeld as a spiritual person,
Right.
but
Right.
he's reaped the energetic benefits of it. Like he's in his 70s and he looks great, and that's what I mean with meditation. In and of itself, I don't think it's just a tool, and you can use it for what you need it to be or what you want it to be. But it's not, if you really want to do your spiritual development, there's a couple of things like that need to get integrated, and then you have to find them out for yourself because everybody's different.
Again, yeah, so the one size fits all doesn't work. I love the idea. To Jerry Seinfeld, he'd have a very busy mind, right? He'd be very, so the idea that he uses the transcendental meditation as like, yeah, for sure.
Well, he's so funny. He says, like when you wake up in the morning and you look at your bed, does it look like that was relaxing? Does it look restful? It's like so funny. Like he's saying, when meditating, you actually, that's where you get deep rest, not when you're sleeping.
Yes, yes. Well, we'll definitely take that to heart for sure. Absolutely. So, if people want to work with you, if somebody wants to connect with you, I know I think I
Oh,
saw
I've
that
got
you
like
have a
a
trip
12
coming
year,
up.
I've got a 12-year wait list. No, I'm just kidding. They can reach out. I'm happy to work with folks that are interested. And you have peterwoodbury.com is my website, and I have a tour coming up to Egypt. We rent the Great
I
Pyramid.
saw
I
that. That looks
I
just
do I
amazing.
do courses to lead up to it, and we have an initiation in the pyramid. That's April 30th to May 10th, and then in the fall we'll be going to Turkey to go see Göbekli Tepe.
Wow. Wow. I'm so jealous that you get to go and do these. And I'm so thankful that you share your stuff online so that we actually get to, be there for, us poor people in Canada who can't get out of the snow and get out of the Yeah, so that's awesome. So I will share all of Peter's stuff
Well, we
in
have a Canadian coming on the trip, and she's looking
oh,
for a roommate. So
oh, it's
yeah, so there you go. And this trip isn't that expensive.
interesting. I will pop
It's
that on the
4,000,
website.
but if you register with someone, you get 125 off. You get you get a rebate for getting your insurance in place, which is the rebate is more than what the insurance costs. So really try to make it. It's a good
Affordable.
price. I made it low to try to fill it up because I created the tour late in the year. So
Right. You know what would be really cool for you to do is, Spears just showing me this, so I'm going to share it with
yeah,
you.
yeah, show me.
Is actually like, filming it, documenting it so that you could create the
A
trip to be
virtual.
online. Exactly. Right. So that for us that, for timing and scheduling and all of that just can't pop off to Egypt. It would be
That's a good
something that we
idea.
would definitely do. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do a lot of filming when I'm there and broadcasting, a lot of live broadcasting. But some places like the Great Pyramid, you can't get internet connection, but that would have to be filmed. But yeah, that could be done. That's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Just film it all and then pop it onto your website, and people pay to go on and enjoy the whole journey and the course and the teachings.
Yeah,
And I feel like for you also, because when you're there and you're like in the moment of it all, there's like, you're experiencing it. So you're not necessarily going to be teaching every moment of it. But if you do it after the fact and you're like putting it all together, I feel like for you, they're going to start channeling more for you. Like you're going to start to receive more stuff as a channel rather than just a teacher. Um,
oh, I do. I do. I
yeah.
get a lot of that when I'm there,
Yeah.
especially in the sarcophagus.
Right.
The still small voice in the sarcophagus like yells.
Wow. Yeah, that's very cool.
One time I went because I go every year, and I went one time, and there was like this energy was so cheerful. It was just saying all the stuff that I could do that the world was ripe for. And then I came back the next year. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't do any of those things. They're going to be so mad. And there was the same energy. They're like, no, it's great. Like now it's even now it's even more ready for what you could
Wow.
do. You know, as I had to laugh that I thought I was going to get
But
like
yeah, yeah.
pointed at, and they're always just so
They don't care
constructive.
because there's no such thing as space or
Yeah,
time. They're
they're
like,
so
yeah.
positive. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Well, Peter, this has been awesome. We definitely will have you come back because there's like so much more we want to explore with you for sure. And
sure.
we'll make sure everybody knows how to reach out to you and keep that whole thing about Egypt online in mind because I
Yeah,
think that
what a
would be
great
really
idea.
cool to experience. Okay, thank you so much, and
Sure.
we will talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, Peter.
Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Collective Soulversations podcast. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen, and we hope that you found our chat both inspiring and thought provoking. Your support means everything to us, and we're excited to keep this journey going with you. So make sure that you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love for you to leave us a review and share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback helps us grow and connect with more wonderful listeners like you. Until next time, stay curious and keep those soulversations flowing.